Hello everyone. Okay, so this is a situation. I didn't exactly do the best job on the clear coat, and maybe kind of stupidly what had happened is that I had maybe after the first coat, when I started seeing that it was dripping and I was leaving things, I should have probably stopped and maybe tried to wet sand it. But my idea is that, well, if I try to wet sand it after the first coat, I might wind up scratching the paint. So maybe it's better to do the 3 coats in a row, and then at least there's some protection, and then I can probably sand down to the imperfections. I don't know if that was idiotic or not. I mean, it's not terrible. I mean, I could live with the car looking like this, and it's still protected, at least. We were kind of shocked it came out so shiny. So what I did is I went ahead and sanded this part with 1000 grit sandpaper. And then I did the Megulars Ultimate Compound. This is how I'm doing it from the video. Now, they claim from the problems I was having that probably I was applying too thick of a coat. The problem with that paint, I mean, I was pretty far away from the car, I thought. But Rust-Oleum paint, it is good, but it does tend to be a little bit on the inconsistent. It's a very difficult paint sometimes to manage. And the clear coat was particularly difficult. But this is kind of a live and learn experience, you know. So we're going to see what happens. What Megulars seems to do, I thought I had done a very good job sanding this down. This had kind of looked like that, and I think I managed to sand it down. Now, unfortunately, I hadn't realized how bad these were, and I didn't wind up sanding them as well as I should have. Then there's some dull spots of where I had really sanded, and that left it dulled a bit. But I've done everything with the Megulars. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait a day, or at least a day. I'm going to let it dry overnight and see what happens. I did see some guy on the computer that had put on Megulars, and it wound up bringing up a bunch of white stuff on it. So I want to make sure that's not going to happen. I'm not going to do any more of the car. I'm going to see what's going to happen with this part. What Megulars seems to do, to some degree, is kind of bring up what's underneath the car and, you know, and try to blend everything together. But the problem is it might wind up, in a way, bringing up imperfections as well. But we'll see what happens. And from there, I'll figure out what my plan of action is. I guess the basic thing is, whatever happens when you try to do something like this, don't panic, you know. Most things are probably fixable. And, you know, if you make a mistake, you make a mistake, you know. You know, there's a lot of things, maybe, you know, you think, well, maybe I should have practiced on something smaller first before I started on a car, you know, or maybe I should have done a smaller part, you know. Maybe there's some things you know, when you thought about it, there would have been a better way of doing this, you know. But, you know, you just do your best and try to learn from it, and hopefully you'll learn from it. I mean, this is the advantage. I'm doing this. Maybe, you know, I might screw up a bit, you know. Maybe it won't turn out as well as I thought it would have turned out, but you guys will be watching my video and you'll say, okay, she should have done this, she should have done that, and if I do my car, I'm going to do it differently. So, you know, it works out for the best. But I think the good news, at least, is that no matter what happens, at least from afar, I still think Selena looks good. I mean, you have to kind of get close to notice the really bad imperfections. But what the important thing is that Selena is protected from the elements now, and And that was really what the main purpose of all of this was to protect her. So, and I think we have at least managed that. Now, if I can get her to look foxy, that's great too. But, you know, we'll see what happens. So, stay tuned. This is what 1000 grit sandpaper looks like. You know what's kind of funny about 1000 grit sandpaper? What it's like is that when you've used another type of sandpaper, let's say 60 grit, and you've used it and you've been sanding your car, and you look at the bottom and all the rough stuff is gone and you see all just the black stuff from the car. Well, that's what 1000 grit is like and what it kind of feels like. Of course, I mean, probably it's still good to get 1000 grit sandpaper, but what I'm saying is that's what it feels like. Okay, what Megulars, from what I can see, what it seems to do is it takes the flaws of your car and you know, some of the good points and the bad points of your car and just kind of seems to mix it all together, and somehow that sometimes seems to make the car look fine. Now, I saw some people that complained that actually it destroyed their car. I'm thinking that could be a problem if you've got a car that might have two extremes. You know, there's some parts of the car that have really good paint, and maybe there's some parts that are really bad. I don't know how it would look with that. But for Selena, it seems to be doing okay. But otherwise, I kind of feel like everything is going bad to worse with me ever since I've done this stupid clear coat. The 1000 grit sandpaper. I don't know what it is about it, but it starts developing pits or creases, and it starts scratching your car. It looks like somebody keyed your car. So that started happening. I changed it and I tried to be more careful, but then on the trunk it happened again. I don't know if you can quite see all that. So I got rid of the 1000 grit sandpaper. And then I got the idea, well, maybe I should try a very light touch with 400 grit sandpaper, which I had better luck with. Now, I did that on this side, but I'm a little worried that may have been a mistake too, because it might have wound up, particularly down here, it might have scratched it up. I'm seeing what the Megulars is going to do with that. What my plan is now is, unless this does turn out better, I might use the clear coat. The problem is, in a lot of ways, I'm tempted not to use the clear coat. My mom actually preferred the car without it. But, well, for one thing, half the car now, well, a quarter of the car has the clear coat now, and the other parts don't, and it would look kind of silly. But another problem is that I would like the paint to last, and if in this, and particularly in Florida weather, I don't know how long it would last without a protective coat. And unfortunately, it seems that the only type of protective coat we can find is spray-on. So, this has been so... I might just wind up doing is that I'll use the clear coat, but I may not bother sanding it at all. Yeah, I'll have streaks maybe. I'll have drips. I might have you know, these little round areas that are caused from, you know, the aerosol, you know. Admittedly, it might have some really bad flaws. But it may look less worse than it would if with sanding. So, but we're going to see. Right now, I did do the Megulars. I'm going to see what the Megulars does. So but you know, it may wind up looking very bad, and I'm going to feel really bad if that, you know, because doing that, you know. Doing this to Selena is like, you know, doing this to my own child, you know, deforming your child, you know, it's just, you know, and it's such a letdown because I felt like I was doing so well, you know, despite all the mistakes I had made, I had felt like I had done very well. And now suddenly this is just, you know, it's just going from bad to worse ever since I've done this stupid clear coat. But we'll see what happens. I'm just kind of crossing my fingers, and I'm hoping for the best, you know. And we'll just see what happens. I think that's all we can do.